Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This is the Psychology in Seattle YouTube channel. And as I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. You really do. Let's watch.
Thaís, would you say you admire Jabri for standing up to John?
Yeah, because Patrick never say anything like, bro, say...
I mean, there's nothing to stand up to. Like, he can go ahead and talk all he wants to talk. It doesn't really make a difference.
Patrick is a person I should be blaming here right now because you should have stood up for your wife.
So the triangle between John, Patrick, and Thaís is interesting. I think I didn't really react to it at all, maybe. I watched it, but I don't think I published any reactions to it throughout the season. I will say that some of it seemed manufactured, but some of it seemed legit. Patrick and John went through a lot growing up. We know that. They've talked about that. We don't know the specifics, but they seem to have gone through a lot of trauma, a lot of neglect, seemingly. And John was the older brother. Sometimes older siblings will sacrifice themselves to some extent for the younger siblings, or they'll just be targeted more. I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick or if John incurred more of the abuse or more of the damage. Maybe he was alive longer during the bad times and Patrick only experienced it for a little bit of time, and who knows, that happens sometimes. I don't know if it's the case with them, but so John seems vulnerable, fragile. In fact, whenever he talks about things right below the surface, it seems like he's struggling with something, and I think he covers it up with a lot of alcohol. He masks the struggle and the alcoholic coping with bravado and a lot of bro this, a lot of p-whipped that, but I see the fragility, I see the pain, and it has come out in the season. Early in the season, he was crying, and while he was intoxicated, I think, but I think he's struggling, and so I don't think he knows what to do with it, with his life. I kind of have a Guillermo cut. See, we could be brothers, right? Or my son. We even had a similar shirt. How'd that happen? What was I saying? Yeah, so I think that Patrick knows that and feels that and knows that he needs to take care of his brother. And for their whole life, you could see how that would be something that would have gotten them through it, helped them to literally survive it by sticking together and supporting each other. Patrick might even kind of owe John something. And so that dynamic is likely there. It's sort of a classic family therapy presentation, honestly. There's a lot of famous sessions with Virginia Satir and others along these lines, adult children with these kinds of histories and pain that they've survived, but they haven't fully processed or thanked each other for and helped to resolve. But anyway, so Thaís comes into it, and Patrick doesn't seem to have a ton of insight into things, and so I think he just tries to placate everyone. He's in between John and Thaís. And Thaís has legit complaints, but I don't think Thaís understands because Patrick and John hasn't explained it to Thaís. And so she's like, I don't understand why you tiptoe around your brother. I mean, he's a 39-year-old man, and you can't just tell him to accommodate a little bit or to stop insulting me and my people, asking me, to appreciate a steak that was on. I mean, just think about that. He dropped a steak on the ground, I think gave it to her, right? And said, you should appreciate it because you're from Brazil. I mean, just think about the massive, disgusting racism and xenophobia in that statement. I mean, anyway, especially when, I don't know, because my association with Brazil is like some of the finest meat barbecue you can ever have. Like Brazilian steakhouses have the best steaks you could ever get, right? So it's like, now, so that's my association with Brazil. I don't know if that's representative, of course, but anyway. So, Thaís has reasons to complain, but I think if they had someone to guide them, I think if Thaís understood what emotionally was at stake, I think she would pull back a little bit. I don't think she's unreasonable. And if John and Patrick, but for the most part, John had some way of coping, some way of healing, some way of getting support and crying and getting these emotions out, I'm guessing that things would be a lot different. He probably wouldn't drink as much. In fact, I'm going to take a guess and say that John, if he is really wanting to be happy and fulfill his needs in his life, that he probably needs to be in intensive therapy and abstain from drinking, because the drinking probably causes a lot of problems. In fact, he said that, he was a good boy last night because he only had 2 drinks. And usually when you hear people say things like that, they have a lot of consequences. I mean, the way they portray his drinking is just like, wow, we're bros, we drink all the time. But the amount of drinking he's probably engaging in, he probably experiences bad consequences nearly every day, like significant. Now, what happens when you drink chronically is you minimize and you go into denial of it, because you're at a crossroads. You either acknowledge reality and the consequences and have to face the reality that you have to stop drinking and face your traumas, which is unbearable because you don't have a therapist to talk to, or you don't know that you're traumatized. Or you go into denial and you just say, well, that's what bros do. They get super effed up and they have massive hangovers, and that's what real men do, and that's what's fun. This is fun. This is fun, gosh darn it. It's fun to be hungover and feel like crap all the time and have my body fall apart, that kind of thing.
Man, she wants you to be more for her.
I don't know. I feel like I'm handling my own, like the best I can. And it is awkward. Like, my older brother's been my older brother my whole life. Like, it's weird to be in this position now where it's like, you can't punk your mom. You didn't do it yet. Like,
yeah, but my mom put in a lot of work, you know what I mean?
My older brother did too.
Right. The tell-all is so much more explicit about what's happening in their lives. I don't understand why they didn't ask the questions in the one-on-one interviews with them during the season, or get into this. They got into this kind of, but it was all just this really, I don't know, for me, just boring stuff. Like, oh, we're looking at rings now, and it's like, get back to this stuff. Anyway, so Patrick is saying it's hard for me. Now, he could explain to Thaís in a more validating way. He could adopt this, what he's saying as like the opener, and then turn to Thaís and say, I get that he bothers you sometimes. It makes sense that he gets in your way. It makes sense that you would want me to stand up for you, and I get that, but I'm kind of in a bind because he's my older brother and I love him, and he's done so much for me, and we've been through a lot, and he's been through a lot, and I feel like I kind of owe him. And that doesn't mean that you owe him, but give me some time. Give me some time to kind of work on this. He's not just an older brother. He's not just this random family member. This is deeper, much deeper than that. And I'm sorry, Thaís, my wife, that you have to sacrifice because of this. But it's kind of, when you're with me, you're kind of joining our family traumas to some extent, and it's just going to take me some time. You could say something like that, but he doesn't. He just says, deal with it and knock it off, and you need to be quiet.
I didn't have my dad. It's the same way. It's like, you can't just like go right for the throat. There's like a way to do it, and like that's what we're getting at.
But
now.
do you think your way?
Interesting. So he's saying there's a way to do it. You don't just go for the throat. What that says to me, I don't know, is that Patrick wants more boundaries with John, but knows through experience that if he is direct or quick about that transition, very bad things will happen. And so he's easing him into it, which makes sense. Now, of course, you would want to include Thaís in on that. So let me tell you, because I've been in this situation in a lot of couple and family therapy situations where someone in power, like Patrick, because he does have a lot of the power in the relationship for a variety of reasons, which I'm sure you could know, and he has a plan. He wants to please Thaís, and so he has a plan with John, but he's just on the track. He's enacting the plan as best as he knows how to do it, but he's not including Thaís in on that plan. Or he thinks he has a plan, but he's mainly behaviorally just avoiding the whole thing. So I've been in this situation a lot. And so the Thaíses of the world will just be like really frustrated with the Patricks, because it's just like nothing ever changes. You're like some delusional weirdo that doesn't understand how the world works. You're not listening to me. You seem to not care. You always blow me off about my feelings. And then the Patricks of the world are just like, lay off, you don't understand, I'll figure it out, get out of my, because the other possibility is that for Patrick and John, they might have had a fairly insular family situation, maybe even with the sister anyway. And they're used to keeping people out, maybe because of shame or something. And so Patrick might just be cocooning and not realizing that that actually is affecting someone else. Like a common example of this is that you have step-parenting situation where two parents that come together and they both have kids that they bring to the marriage. Both parents prior to coming together were single parents and they were parenting on their own and were in the trenches, and they maybe struggled with various different things as parents do, but some kids are, more special needs than others. The two parents come together and there's this transition, and often there's all these lofty dreams of just like, well, it's going to be like the Brady Bunch, everything's going to be fine and we love each other and the kids will get along and yada. Because when the new partner comes around, it's usually like Disneyland dad or Disneyland mom, right? It's this situation where the step parent is fun times, but when you actually move in together, then you actually have to start disciplining and monitoring and that kind of thing. And conflicts happen, and the two parents don't sit down and say, okay, what's our system here? What is our way of vocalizing to each other? What's our plan? I see that your kid is actually kind of out of control in this way, or there's a problem there. What's going on? And each parent will say like, well, I've got it under control, back off, that kind of thing. And that can create a lot of conflict, right? So it's like the Thaís. So think of John as like a kid, I guess. And Patrick is like, I got to figure it out. Leave me alone. But Thaís is like, but it's impacting me and you're blowing me off. You see what I'm saying? So that if Patrick and Thaís just had a way of talking about it, and Patrick said, yes, I have a plan. And Thaís was like, okay, what's the next step? Because I feel like you're just avoiding. I think you have a plan, but you're not actually acting on it. So what's the next step? And so there's a plan that you work together, like 5 points. Like with John, it would be, well, step 1 is to transition you into my life, get him used to that, because that's going to take some time. Step 2 is to start laying the groundwork for him possibly living on his own, but not pressuring him. So I'm gonna do that on my time, and I'm gonna have my way of talking with him. We're not gonna spring it on him like we're confronting. It'll be while we're drinking and he's loose and relaxed, and I'll just say, hey, what do you think about da-da-da? Just throwing it out there, and then there'll be that phase, and then there'll be this phase, So there's a plan there, but it's discussed. People are on the same page. Instead, what Patrick is doing is, in a sexist way or something, just being like, I'm the man, I got it figured out, or we have an insular family and stay out of it, you don't really understand.
I didn't have my dad. It's the same way. It's like you can't just like go right for the throat. There's like a way to do it, and like that's what we're getting at.
But
now.
do you think your way is effective? Because it seems like Thaís is still hurting.
I don't know. It's the best I could do.
Right, so there it is, I think, which is, I don't know, it's best I can do, lay off. Instead of, Thaís, please, let me explain it to you and all that talk. It's like, I don't know, doing the best I can, leave me alone. And it's like, Thaís is over here going, but it impacts me. By the way, listener Isabel from the Bay Area emailed in and wanted me to share something with y'all that's kind of related to this, which is that in the United States, we have the Violence Against Women Act, which was passed in 1994. And listener Isabel wanted everyone to know that if you Google it, there are programs to end violence against women, and also a program to help immigrant women who are suffering from violence and abuse. You can look that up and actually get some help from those programs.
I mean, I'm trying.
I just don't like that people think that they can say things to people without repercussions. That pisses me off.
And at the beginning of our conversation, you had this exchange.
So you see that Jabri is still kind of locked in on John saying, I don't like it that John thinks he can say things without there being repercussions, meaning I think Jabri wants to fight him, wants to humiliate him, that kind of thing, cause him pain, which points to what I was saying maybe in another video, that Jabri is pretty highly triggered by John in a visceral way. All right, well, if you didn't know already, we have merch. You can click the links below to get t-shirts and mugs. We're always coming up with new things. My wife actually comes up with the designs, so you can get those there. And honestly, most of my, we always get samples to see what they look like in real life, and my entire wardrobe is now basically podcast merch, and that's pretty much all I wear all the time. So I like them. I like my wife's designs. So yeah, you can also find me on Cameo if you want me to give a shout out to someone, a happy birthday or happy anniversary. It's always fun for me to do those, and only if you want to. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.